second grade friends. Welcome to another edition of Mindful Play with Mrs. Pond. Today in our Read Aloud, we are going to read a story that is called Salt in His Shoes. It is a story about a young boy who dreams of becoming a basketball player. What I want you guys to be doing as I read the story is listening to our focus sentence. Our focus sentence reads, "He was disappointed, but he did not stop believing." So I want you to, while I read the story, to listen for that sentence, and that will be the sentence that we will be working on Tuesdays and Thursdays in our grammar section. You will be fixing the sentence as well as doing a follow-up activity for that. After I read the story, you will be doing an activity, a comprehension activity, and our comprehension focus this week is lesson or moral of a story. And you might be asking, well, what is a lesson of a story? What is the moral of a story? Well, lesson of the story and a moral of a story is what the author wants you, the reader, to learn from the story. You may also hear it called the moral of the story. Okay, and there's different ways to try to figure out how to figure out what the lesson or moral of the story is, and that will be on your page for the comprehension page that you will be doing after you hear the story. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read the story to you. Once I finish reading the story, look in your packet to find the one that says lesson, moral of a book, and go ahead and fill that out about the story. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and read Salt in His Shoes. Salt in His Shoes, written by Dolores Jordan with Rosalind Jordan, illustrated by Kadir Nelson. Michael loved to play basketball. Every Saturday he followed his older brothers, Larry and Ronnie, to the park, hoping that they would let him play. And if one of the guys who usually played with them didn't show, they always did. But there was one problem. His name was Mark, and he was the tallest boy on the court. "What's the matter, Mikey? Too short?" Mark flapped his arms in Michael's face. "Over here!" shouted Larry. But when Michael threw the ball, Mark's long arms came out from nowhere and knocked the ball away. It flew into the hands of the player on Mark's team. He made the basket, and the game was over. Just like that. "I'm really sorry, guys. If I were taller, that wouldn't have happened." All the way home, Michael apologized, and even though no one was mad at him, his older brother Ronnie tried to cheer him up. "Look, little brother, you played good today. Don't worry, we'll win the next time." When they got home, Michael went into the kitchen where Mama was cooking dinner. He was still disappointed, and she could tell. "You guys lost again today, huh?" Michael nodded. He sat quietly for a minute, then said, "Mama, how can I grow taller?" Now, Mama knew the answer to a lot of questions, but that was a tough one. She thought for a moment as she sprinkled salt and pepper on the chicken she was making for dinner. And then she smiled, looked at Michael, and said, "Salt." "Salt?" Michael looked at his Mama. "Salt in your shoes. We'll put salt in your shoes and say a prayer every night. Before you know it, you'll be taller," she replied. "Salt in my shoes?" Michael said quietly to himself. Surely Mama was teasing. He sat staring out the window, trying to figure out how salt was going to help him grow. He noticed the rose bushes outside in Mama's garden. They had grown high along the fence. The roses of all colors were blooming on the vines. He thought to himself, "I remember when Mama first planted those bushes." Michael's face lit up. If Mama knows how to make those rose bushes grow taller, then maybe she's right. Maybe salt in my shoes really will help me grow. Growing more excited, Michael twirled around and started asking lots of questions. "Mama, how long will it take? And how tall do you think I'll get? Smiling, Mama sat down next to him and explained, in order for this to work, the most important thing you have to do are be patient and listen to what I tell you and say your prayers every night. Listening carefully, Michael shook his head. Okay, Mama, I'll be patient. But what does saying prayers have to do with it? Everything, Mama replied, and she hugged him. Now go, wash up, and tell your brothers and sister to get ready for dinner. Michael dashed out of the kitchen, almost knocking over his father, who was walking in. What's he up to now? Asked Daddy. Oh, the usual, laughed Mama, chasing a dream. Later, during dinner, Mama noticed that Michael was barely eating anything. He was already daydreaming about being taller. Michael, first things first. You won't grow if you don't eat, especially your vegetables, Mama said. But I'm not really hungry, he said. Raising her eyebrows, Mama gave him a stern look. Slowly, Michael picked up his fork and began to eat. Minutes later, his plate was clean and he was asking for more. That evening at bedtime, Michael set his favorite game shoes on the floor next to the growth chart hanging on the wall. And then he put on his pajamas, said his prayers, and jumped into bed. When Mama came in, Michael was fast asleep. By the look on his face, she could tell he was already playing basketball in his dreams. Standing by his bed, Mama sprinkled salt into his shoes, and then she prayed quietly over him as she did all her children. Dear God, please help Michael to be the best he could be and to give him best in all that he does. And Lord, could you please make him just a little bit taller tomorrow than he was today? Thank you. Amen. After that night, Michael wore his favorite game shoes everywhere he went, even to church. And he stopped going to the park with his brothers on Saturdays. Instead, he stayed home and practiced. He wanted to grow a few more inches before he went back to the park. After 2 months of practicing and waiting patiently and praying, Michael stood next to the growth chart on his wall. Nothing. He hadn't grown an inch. He was disappointed, but he did not stop believing. I've just got to give it time, like Mama said, Michael thought to himself, and that's what he did. 2 more months of practicing went by, and still nothing. Now Michael was becoming a little sad. Not only had he not grown 1 inch, but he also missed playing basketball with Larry and Ronnie. About the only thing he didn't miss was being picked on by Mark. When the next Saturday came, his brothers tried to get Michael to go with him to the park, but he wouldn't budge. Mama had begun to worry. And when she saw Michael sitting alone on the steps, she said to Daddy, maybe you should go out and talk to him. So Daddy went out and sat with Michael. What's wrong, son? You haven't gone to the park with your brothers for a while now. Are you okay? Michael didn't say anything at first, and then he looked at Daddy and said, I thought I would be at least a few inches taller by now. I did everything Mama told me to do, but nothing happened. Michael, why do you want to be taller? Daddy asked. If I were taller, I'd be a great player and I could help our team win, Michael answered. But you are a great player, son, and you already have everything it takes to be a winner right in here. Daddy tapped Michael in his chest. Being taller may help you play a little better, but not as much as practice, determination, and giving your best will. Those are the things that make you a real winner. Michael thought about what Daddy said for a few minutes. Then suddenly he jumped up and took off. Where are you going? Daddy yelled after him. I've got a game today and I'm late, Michael yelled back. When Michael reached the park, the game had started. He sat on the bench, hoping he would get a chance to play, and he did. The game was almost over, The score was tied when John, one of the guys on Michael's team, fell and hurt himself. Here was Michael's chance. Michael joined his team in the huddle as they gathered on the sideline for a timeout. Okay, the game is tied, and all we need is 1 point. Who wants to take the shot? Ronnie asked. He looked in Michael's direction. Feeling more confident than ever, Michael said, I'll do it. When the whistle blew and the game began again, Mark began to pick on Michael as usual. Still trying to play with the big boys, huh? Mark taunted. But Michael paid him no attention. Taller or not, he had been practicing, and today he was determined to win. Larry threw the ball inbounds to Michael. Michael caught it, bounced it for a moment, and then took off running. As he approached Mark, Michael shifted to the right. Mark followed, but while he was still shifting, Michael spun to his left. He stepped behind Mark and shot. The ball arched far above his opponent's hands and fell silently through the hoop. 2 points. The game was over. Michael's team had won. It was just as Michael had dreamed. And when he realized what he had done, Michael took off running and didn't stop until he had reached home. Bursting through the door, he shouted, I did it, Daddy, I did it. I shot right over that tall guy's head and we won the game. Running in behind him, Ronnie and Larry joined the celebration. That's right, little brother, you did it. You won the game for us. Michael remembered the look that Ronnie gave him during the last time out on the game and said, No, we won the game. But I was the star. They all laughed. And after that, Mama stopped putting salt in Michael's shoes. But Michael did not stop being patient and working hard and praying. So that must be what made Michael grow to be a 6'6" tall basketball superstar.